Good morning, River Rocks. This is Patrick Dyer, and I'm with the SALT group this year, and I'll be going through Psalm 44 with you today. Before we do that, though, I just want to go ahead and do a little brief recap of Psalms 42 and 43. If you remember, the main message from both of those psalms was about how we, as believers in God, should always have hope in God in the midst of any kind of hardship. And remember, our faith is not meant for times of comfort or of peace, but of hardship and struggle. And this is obviously a lesson that Israel in particular had to learn over and over again. In fact, today's psalm will be covering what happens when Israel has their hope in God truly challenged and what those challenges are actually for. So, Psalm 44 is a really interesting psalm because the psalmist here gives us a big picture of the mindset that a lot of people in Israel must have had at the time when they were going through hardship after hardship. In fact, we even see here if you look here in the first 8 verses or so, it talks about how the psalmist here remembers a time when God would allow victories upon victories for Israel, where He would protect them from the threats of their enemies. However, when you start here in verse 9, continuing all the way through around verse 22, here the psalmist gives us the picture of not victories, but now defeats. So Israel before would put their hope in God mainly because of God giving them victories over their enemies. But now we start to see that hope in God really being challenged with defeat upon defeats. And in fact, the situation for them at the time was so terrible. Their enemies would come in and take over their lands. They would plunder all their treasures. In fact, they would kill many, many, many Israelites. In fact, the situation got so bad and so chaotic that many Israelites were, as it says here in verse 11, it says that they were scattered amongst the nations. So then the Israelites were left without a home. They would have to go to the surrounding nations to find a new home, but every single place they would go to, they would be turned away by the people of those surrounding nations. So a big thing that you notice here when you read through Psalm 44 is that the psalmist speaks with a great deal of heartache and confusion. So heartache, obviously, for the immense pain that he and his fellow Israelites were most likely suffering, but confusion because there was also this great sense of, well, wait a minute, we are God's chosen people. Why is God allowing all of this hardship upon us? We are His faithful. We are the ones that are supposed to be putting our faith and hope in God, and yet He is returning that faith and hope with hardship after hardship. Well, we have to remember who we're really actually talking about. We're talking about Israel. This is, yes, the nation of God's chosen people, but remember, if you know anything about Old Testament history, we could see that Israel has time and time again fallen off of the path of God. So we start, and examples, of course, would be Israel worshiping a golden calf after being freed from Egypt to allowing false gods into their temple, starting with the reign of King Solomon. And we also see with the different kings of Israel, starting from Solomon onwards, they would start to become corrupt over time because they forgot that they were there to serve God, but instead, over time, started to serve themselves. And from that, a great deal of corruption and chaos would sweep through Israel. But for all of Israel's failures, the one thing that we notice routinely, time and time again, is that God allows for chances of redemption for Israel. Because only in moments of true struggle do we start to see the need for His redemption. That's when we start to cry out for God. That's when we cry out for His love and His mercy so that we can be redeemed back into His loving arms. And here in Psalm 44, we start to see the culmination of that crying out. Here, starting in verse 23 here, we'll start from there and continue on into the very end at 26. So verse 23, awake, why do you sleep, O Lord? Arise, do not cast us off forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust, and our body clings to the ground. Arise for our help, and redeem us for your mercy's sake. So when we are at our lowest points, when our souls, as it says here, are down to the dust, when we're clinging to the earth, that's when we put all our hope in God so that He can redeem us. When we're down, clinging to the earth, that's the opportunity for us to look up to God and to cry out for His redemption. So my prayer for all of you today is that you let any season of hardship and struggle be a time where you cry out for God to redeem you into His likeness. Don't let the heartache and confusion and even the frustration of those times of hardship blind you from what God really wants you to be. So that's when you know it's, in fact, when you are in those times of hardship, that's when you know you have to cry out to God so that He can redeem you to be holy in His likeness. So thank you so much for watching, and God bless you all, and have a great rest of your day.